Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoy.
He motioned like he threw something on the road, then began to mimic playing hopscotch. He jumped on both legs the first time, then hopped on one foot to the next. He repeated that motion, all while getting closer to me. The closer he got, I saw markings on his arms. Not tattoos. These looked like they were carved. Symbols and numerals I didn't understand as a child. When he got halfway through the road, he jumped on all fours and smiled. His teeth looked like they were filed down to just points, razor sharp. He moved his mouth like he was talking, but no sound came out. After a minute of this, I started hearing him in my head, like he was whispering into the wind that carried it over to me. His voice hissed like a snake, telling me all the things he wanted to do to me. Horrible, cruel things. I ran as fast as I could to my house. When I looked back, I saw he wasn't chasing me. He just stood up and casually followed my path, all while keeping a nasty grin. I ran through the front door of my house. My mother met me at the door as I blasted myself into her arms, crying and wailing. I screamed for her to make it go away. She asked me what was there and what I saw, but before I could say anything, she shushed me and told me she saw it. I turned around and could see the fat man casually walking up our driveway. The front door wide open if he wanted to just stroll right in. My mother sat me down and told me to close my eyes. I begged her not to let me go, but she looked at me and said, "Antonio, I promise you will never let anything hurt you. Do you trust me, my son, moon and stars?" she said so gentle. I told her I did as I closed my eyes. I heard her go out the door and close it, and the yelling haunts me to this day. I heard my mother yelling something. I don't know, maybe an incantation or a prayer or something. The thing though, that fat man roared like some animal I never heard before. It went on until I heard one last whisper in my head from that thing. His hissing voice filled my head, saying one phrase that just fucking haunts me to hear to this day. "I'll be waiting for you," it hissed in my head from all directions. I lost my train of thought at this point and tried to stand up, looking at the doctor taking his notes. I started hyperventilating in a frenzy, thinking about the fat man. I fell to the floor, feeling lightheaded all of a sudden. I couldn't fight back the tears and the sense of dread that was inevitable talking about these memories. The doctor quickly rushed over to me and put his hand on my shoulder, kneeling down to the floor with me. "Antonio, I need you to breathe nice and easy. Breathe in and breathe out. Can you do that for me?" the doc said. I still struggled to control my breath as I grabbed the doctor's arms, letting my fear hit his ears. "Doc, you don't fucking understand. I see him everywhere now, ever since my mom passed away. He's at my work, he's outside every window I see. I have a wife and kids now. The other day I went to take my little girls to the playground and he was fucking there. When I went to go grab something from my car, he was fucking there pushing my kids on the swing set. He tells me all the violent things he wants to do to me while making my kids watch." I said in between gasps, trying to regain control of my breath. The doctor kept his patience with me and calmed me down, telling me to start first controlling my breathing. I finally regained control and he helped me back to the couch. "I'm sorry, Doc. It's taken a lot of medication and a lot of alcohol to block these memories from haunting me," I said. "Would you consider yourself an alcoholic?" the doctor asked. "Borderline. I did start drinking more as I got old enough to." I do. Do you think the drinking escalated some of these things you were seeing? The doctor asked. I don't honestly know. I can tell you I've had at least a drink every day since I was 25, I confessed. Okay, is there anything else you feel you need to add about your childhood before we move on to what has happened recently? The doctor asked while writing in his notes. I laid back and thought about the one last thing I didn't talk about, even to my wife. Yeah, that day I met the fat man. When my father came home that day, my mother pulled him into a room by themselves. I heard my father telling my mother, I understand some things are unexplainable, but this shit is ridiculous. I refuse to believe a level of bullshit this big, he yelled at her. That night, while I was in bed, a knock came at the door around 3 a.m. It was so loud it woke me from my sleep. My mother somehow rushed to the door before my father could. I stood in the doorway to my bedroom watching my mother run down the hallway to the aggressive knocking at the door. She turned the corner and I couldn't see her anymore. I could only hear her open the door and gasp. You may not enter. These grounds are protected, I heard her say. Shortly after she spoke, I saw my father rush from the bedroom down the hallway, disappearing out of my sight to the front door. Only my mother spoke briefly. My father never uttered a word. I watched him as he came down the dark hallway. A small safety nightlight plugged into a socket illuminated his face as he stopped to look at me briefly. Normally he would have said, "Good night," or, "Let's get to bed, little guy." That night, he saw something out there that changed him when he went to the door. His face looked pale, scared, almost empty of any emotion. I had never seen him like that. He looked at me, but it's like he was reluctant to see me. He walked right past me and closed the door to the bedroom. I remember the sound of the gunshot that night. It was brief and loud. It scares me still how quick death works sometimes. Just one flash can end someone's lifelong journey that seemed filled with purpose and promise. My mother was hysterical, crying and holding my father when the police arrived. He had shot himself before she shut the front door. Hearing my mother slam the door broke that silence for me finally. After that night, things were seemingly normal until I hit 25 and developed a slight drinking problem. I started seeing them again. It was never too bad usually, just quick glances of them around the corner of my eye at work or at a bar. I got so used to it didn't bother me. A quick glance of them all just staring and pointing like I was some outcast or unwanted thing. At church, they usually stayed in sight the longest, so I just stopped going. I can't say I honestly ever really believed in anything anyway. I just think I'm crazy. It was when my mom died a month ago. That's why I sought you out, Doc. It's gotten so bad since my mom died. I know I called you like crazy for the past 3 weeks. I just heard you were very good with this kind of thing. Helping people like me who are probably delusional. I mean, it has to be just manifestation from trauma or something, right? You mentioned on the phone something happened during your mother's funeral. Would you care to share that with me? Asked Dr. White. I saw Santa Muerte at my mother's wake. She came when everyone left off, and I was by myself, staring at my lifeless, beautiful mother in her open casket. She glided down the church pews holding a bouquet of flowers. She no longer wore a veil to hide the white of her skull wrapped with a floral headband of white and red roses. She placed her bare skeletal hand on my mother's head and put a white rose in her hands. She then looked at me and said, "This is no place for you. Seek help from the Father. She then walked past me until she disappeared walking down aisle. I don't know what's funnier in my hallucinations, death personified as a lady telling me, an atheist, to ask God the Father for help, or just thinking that I am seeing death personified. The doctor stopped writing in his notes and set his red notebook down. He got up and took out a bottle of whiskey from his drawer along with 2 glasses. He poured both glasses and sat one in front of me. He sipped his glass casually before he spoke. I cannot say I've seen a case like yours exactly, but I believe I can help. You seem like a whiskey guy. Have a drink. You're shaking still, said the doc. Doc, I've been drinking too much. I'm afraid I will see it. That fat man if I drink anymore, I said nervously, looking at the glass. That's what we want, Antonia. I need you to see you when you think it's close to you. This will help bring you back to reality. Don't worry, it's part of the process. Just tell me what you see and hear, and I will show you that nothing is real, assured the doctor. With my back to the closed door of the office, I took the glass and downed it, ungracefully but efficiently to achieve a nice relaxed buzzed state. The doctor stared at me while casually slipping his glass. The sound of a door breaking into splinters filled my ears and made my eyes widen in panic. Footsteps accompanied the sounds of shattered splinters flying in all directions, spraying the hallway blocked by the closed office door to my back, the only thing protecting me from a bone-grinding death of a fat beast. Antonio, would you prefer your arms ripped off first or your legs? I'll let you choose. The hissing voice of the fat man crawled through my ears. The footsteps stopped, and the doorknob to the door behind me began to jiggle. First slow, then faster. A voice yelled out as the door began to violently shake, screaming, "Where's your fucking mommy now to protect you, you little fucking prick?" I began hyperventilating again as I saw pictures and vases shaking in the doctor's office, a result of the violent onslaught trying to break the door down. Dr. White casually looked at me, seemingly unfazed by anything going on.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to one of my videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.